The dating pool is absolutely horrible. Everyone is playing games. No one's serious. It's that mindset that it's basically a waste of time. And if someone starts with that mindset, they're already setting themselves up to be disappointed and to experience more of the same.
Today's dating world is louder than it's ever been. More advice, more opinions, and somehow more confusion. Everywhere you look, you're told to choose a side, be dominant, be independent, chase love, or protect yourself by any means necessary. But what if the real issue isn't men versus women? Maybe it's clarity? That's why today's conversation matters. My guest is Dr. Michele Henry, a dating and relationship coach who helps people cut through the extremes and understand what actually works in real relationships. This isn't about viral sound bites or rigid rules. It's about insight, balance, and practical wisdom you can apply immediately. I'm Jelani. This is Behind the Story. Let's get into it. Dr. Henry, welcome to Behind the Story. Thanks for being here.
For having me, I'm excited to be here.
Great. I'm excited to have you. It's a very, very interesting and relevant topic, relationship and dating. But before we get into the weeds about it, I want to give you a chance and an opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience, the Behind the Story audience that may not be aware of you and your work. So tell me, what first pulled you into relationship and dating work, and when did you realize this wasn't just an interest, but a purpose for you to?
Yes, this dates back to my the start of my career as practicing psychologist. I had a lot of wonderful experiences supporting so many people with mental health challenges. I've supported individuals, couples, groups. I've worked in a variety of settings, and I've always had a passion for helping people. And at some point, I found myself becoming more interested in the realm of dating and relationships. And as I continue to, support people around dating and relationships, I thought more about how I wanted to show up for them. And I started thinking a little bit more about coaching. However, never seriously considered making the shift at that time, but it was always in the back of my mind. So as I continued to support people around dating and relationships, I started thinking more and more about, if that was the type of shift I wanted to make in terms of my career. And so, after taking a couple of detours along the way, I eventually explored that dating and relationship coaching. I earned a dual certification in life and health coaching from an ICF accredited program. And, in addition to that, I do have a PhD in counseling psychology. So that was the start of my career in counseling psychology. After I got my certification, I was really excited. And I thought, what, this is the path for me. And then coupled with my own personal experiences, my own journey in dating as a single woman who, quite frankly, made a lot of decisions that I didn't feel good about, feeling, lost and not knowing if I would ever connect with someone special. And, after giving myself time to think more deeply about what it meant to date, especially as I got older, I also got support, started paying closer attention to other coaches, and thought, I need support. I could benefit from support. And so that sort of fueled my passion for exploring coaching in the realm of dating relationships as well. And so, after I got the support and started dating in a way that felt more empowering, I started to enjoy the process. And eventually it led to meeting my husband and establishing a career as a dating and relationship coach.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And we're going to talk about marriage in a bit because that's one of the things that is so relevant that I see really bananas stories being put out there. But I wonder, tell me if you will, before you became a dating coach, and I'm assuming in a currently successful marriage, obviously, what lessons did you personally have to learn the hard way about relationships?
Ooh, there's so many.
Oh,
Right, right. Well, one that comes to mind is that, I have a choice. I hear so many people, and I love supporting women. My passion is truly supporting women who are on this journey to find love. But, I had to shift my mindset from wanting to be chosen to knowing that I have a choice too. It's not just about the other person choosing me. I want to know that, I choose them and that it feels like the right fit. So I'll say before I learned that lesson, I found myself entering into relationships where it felt a little one-sided. And I didn't always feel like my needs were being met. And I found myself sort of chasing the approval within my relationships because I didn't always choose for myself. And so that was one important lesson, knowing that I have a choice. And even once I established a relationship with someone, and it also relates to the choice, knowing that at some point it's important to give myself permission to leave the relationship as opposed to investing a lot of time hoping and wishing that, I'll see this potential or that we'll connect in a deeper way when, I had so many of the signs early on, the red flags. So, that was another lesson, you know, recognizing or accepting the red flags, the early signs so that I could make a decision that's right for me and not fall into the mindset trap of, I won't attract anyone or finding love will just be delayed and, I'll just be unhappy as opposed to trusting the journey.
what's the first belief about dating and relationships that you usually have to dismantle when you start working with a new client?
Well, one really common belief is that the dating pool is absolutely horrible. That everyone is playing games. No one's serious. It's that mindset that it's basically a waste of time. And if someone starts with that mindset, they're already setting themselves up to be disappointed and to experience more of the same, opposite of what they truly, truly want in their dating journey. Helping people to understand that, it starts with your mindset and what you truly believe. And if someone believes that, yes, there's someone out there for me, it's a process and I'm open to it, then they're on the right path to making that connection. But it's important to believe that for yourself.
There's lots of so-called gurus out there now giving dating advice. There was Kevin Samuels years ago. Rest in peace to Kevin Samuels. There's people who follow Andrew Tate, and there's a host of other people. And thankfully, I'm not in the dating pool at the moment because I would have no idea how to navigate this new reality. I really feel for younger people. But why do you think that modern dating advice is making people more confused and not clearer?
I believe because there's just so much of it. There's so much noise, if you will, so many different opinions about how to date. And it eventually it translates to like a bunch of rules, which can be very overwhelming. And, anytime I have one-on-one conversations about dating, even my live streams, one of the most common statements that I hear is that it's confusing. It's overwhelming. I don't know which way to turn. I don't know who to listen to or what advice is right. Just like you were naming, people in the field who talk about dating and relationships. I hear people talking a lot about different people they follow, all the advice they hear. And if you're just consuming a lot of advice or you believe there are a number of rules that you have to follow in order to make a connection with someone, that can feel really overwhelming and discouraging. So I think that is a huge, huge challenge. Just constantly consuming so much information around it, as opposed to taking a step back and understanding that when you consume some information, it's important to hear it, sit with it, but to know that all information doesn't apply to you. We all have opinions. We all share what we believe is the best way to make a connection. But ultimately, it's up to the person who's hearing the information, who's consuming the information.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in not giving advice on something that you are not good at or have not been successful at. And I always beware of people that are giving advice, but they're not walking their talk. They don't have the proof that they've actually done it. If you're going to talk to me about marriage, can I see your successful marriage? Don't tell me you're divorced unless you're telling me on how not to get divorced. Because if you're divorced, you did not succeed. Why should I listen to you? That's where I come at it. I'm a complete failure when it comes to relationships. So I'm not giving anybody advice. If you want to know what not to do, I've got you covered. You can ask me. I could tell you all the crap that you should not do in a relationship. But if you're going to ask me, Jelani, what should I do? I got nothing for you because I'm in a successful relationship now. But 3 years in, I don't think that's enough of a success to give anybody advice. So I always beware of people that are, giving advice and you're not even in a relationship. Well, what are you talking about? Why should I listen to you? Here's a question for you. Why is it, and I don't know if it's just me making this assumption, but I feel as though dating has become polarized between sort of dominance and independence. It's almost like they operate in a dichotomy. Why do you think that is?
I think it's also related to what we were just talking about, all the noise, all the opinions, society, all the traditional beliefs around dating and relationships. And this is one of many reasons why I always encourage people to, first and foremost, have clarity about what you truly want as it relates to dating and relationships. Because when you are listening and following all the different opinions and the stereotypes around dating and relationships, you're no longer making decisions that are right for you, that are based on what you truly want. It's really based on what you're hearing. And also being aware of what influences you were exposed to, that has also supported some of the beliefs around dating and relationships. Because sometimes we think we want a certain type of relationship because it's what we want, but actually it could be related to what we were taught or what was modeled for us. So being aware of where those desires are coming from. Is it truly your own? Or is this what you were led to believe at some point in your life and you just never really questioned it or explored it further?
I thought of a question to ask you as I was preparing for this interview, and it comes from um my personal story. And because there's advice that's out there that sounds empowering, but I think it ruins relationships. And I want to ask you your opinion on that. But before I ask you that, let me tell you on a personal story. People always talk about, you should love the person how they want to be loved, or you should love how you want to be loved. And I've got to say, that's bananas. And I learned that the hard way that that's not really good advice. And I'll tell you why. I realized, I just learned this for the new year. My wife, we were having a discussion about something, and she was responding in a way where she thought I didn't love her. And I was surprised to be honest, because I thought, wait a minute, I interact with you the same way I interact with our son. I interact with you the same way I interact with my brothers. I interact with you the same way I interact with my nephew. And
You froze for a
uh,
while.
I know, but I'll start it again. So what I realized is that I was loving her the way I love everybody else, because, like you mentioned earlier, conditioning and how you were growing up. And that does not work, because in loving her the same way, she didn't feel loved. She said, I don't feel it. And I'm thinking, What do you mean? I love you. Like you do not even, you can't even imagine because I was doing it according to what I knew. And I just wonder, from your perspective as a coach, what is some dating advice that sounds good but actually is not good? Sorry, I know I froze again. Can you hear me? Okay. So the question I was asking you is, what is some advice that sounds empowering but actually ruins relationships from your perspective?
One thing I would say is, this belief that, if someone there's this phrase, if they wanted to, they would. And, for some people when they hear that, it can be empowering because it reminds you that, yeah, you have a choice. And at the same time, you'll know if someone really wants to be in a relationship when they're intentional and making a decision to do that. But sometimes people don't always make decisions in the right moment. Sometimes, depending on the mindset, the circumstances, that can determine how someone shows up. And this is why communication is so key in relationships, because you want to understand where they're coming from, and to throw all these different phrases around to help you to feel better or more empowered about the way you show up and receive someone in a relationship, can create more confusion, and can create, more of a disconnect than anything else. So not getting caught up in all these different phrases to help you to feel more empowered along the way, in dating.
What do you think that we men and women misunderstand about each other when it comes to dating and relationships?
That, ultimately we really want the same thing. We want to feel desired, want to feel that connection, want to feel, that we're on the same page, as opposed to thinking that what we want is so different. I mean, of course, we have different personalities and we may have other preferences, but as far as what people want most in a relationship, I think we do share that pretty much in common. You want to know that someone truly desires to be in a relationship with you. And, one of the best ways to understand that is to understand,
Absolutely. The funny thing is, we live in a time where people are not meeting each other the old ways in person and meeting online and whatnot. And I saw one of your posts where you were discussing going on the coffee date. Tell me about that. Why do you think going for coffee is okay as a first date as opposed to laying out all the bells and whistles of dinner and wine and whatnot? Why the coffee date? Tell me about that.
yeah, thank you for asking that question, because this comes up a lot. And, I think a coffee date is important because it first, it gives you an opportunity to really talk, and it keeps it simple. There can be a lot of pressure when you're having that first date, that initial contact in person. And it's just a nice low pressure way to get to know someone. Not to mention, when you have a simple date with someone, it also creates an easy or an opportunity to end the date if it doesn't feel right for any reason. But when you're at a restaurant, or you're meeting for the first time in a way that feels much more extravagant, it's sometimes it can be a little bit harder to end the date when you need to. Not to mention, sometimes you get distracted by everything that's going on around you, that you may not be as engaged or as present with the person. And sometimes you may find yourself getting caught up in all of that and not recognizing that there probably wasn't really much of a connection because of all the distraction that surrounded the date. And I think it's important to keep it simple, because you really, really want to give yourself the opportunity to get to know someone in a meaningful way without all the distractions, as I shared.
Understood. And that's a great point. Do you think that some of this is generational? For example, I saw a post online and I wrote it down because I wanted to ask you about it. And it was I'm not going to name the person because I don't want to put anybody on the spot or anything like that, but it's a famous person saying a man must be willing to spend on her friends on the date. And I thought, this is bonkers. This is bananas. I'm expect. So am I just old? Is this just a generational thing? Because I would immediately leave. I know that's probably not proper form and not bad and not good manners, but I would walk out. Is some of this advice generational and I'm just out of touch?
I believe some of it is. And I also believe some of it's also related to sort of testing the limits. I hear so many people, and I hear men and women have these conversations about because there's so much frustration, disappointment, overall pessimism around dating and making connections. I think sometimes people are looking for other ways to understand or confirm that someone is really interested or wanting to get to know them, so they throw out these different tests to see if they're going to respond favorably, when actually it's just most likely going to have the opposite effect. As you mentioned, you would just walk out, which I don't blame you. I would be more curious and want to have a conversation about it before walking out, but I certainly understand that. So, yeah, partially generational, and also I think it's just another one of those games that people play sometimes when they're just lacking clarity and confidence in the.
Yeah. And to be clear, I have a bit of a sarcastic personality when it comes to that sort of thing. I would probably say no and then leave. I wouldn't just let you know it's a no and I'm gone. But anyway,
That's
which is
fair.
probably why I was not good at relationships. Um, one of the sentiments I see based on the comments, I'll watch a reel or something, and I can't even. Sometimes for me, the comments are so disconnected from what was said, and I start thinking, "Wow, is that how people are interpreting that message?" And honestly, I've started to believe that I'm nuts because I look at the reel or the comment, and then I look at what other people are commenting, and I'm thinking, that is completely not even in the realm of what the person meant or said. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm the crazy one because everybody else is commenting around the same line. So I'm the one that's crazy. Do you find that a lot of smart people or successful people, they struggle a lot with dating because of where they are mentally?
I mean, as I shared earlier, it's related to your mindset, and that's often independent of your success or how smart you are. And when it comes to matters of the heart, you're not always thinking rationally. You're not always thinking about what makes sense. You're thinking about whatever reaction, whatever feeling that you have in the moment. And sometimes that can create a disconnect at the same time. So, um, when you I've noticed exactly what you're talking about with regard to those comments. Like, wait a minute, that has nothing to do with. I mean, also it's important to recognize it, that sometimes that's like attention seeking behavior too, where people will make comments that aren't necessarily related to the post, or they're wanting to get a reaction from other people because, they're feeling a little unsettled about where they are or what their thoughts are around dating and relationships. So sometimes people have some other agenda.
From your opinion, what does a healthy dating cycle or situation look like today?
Knowing the mindset that you have prior to entering into the dating scene. So, relating it to what we were discussing earlier, if you have all these negative thoughts around what it means to date, then that's a good indication that it's time to gain a little bit more clarity about what you truly want and what you want to believe is possible for you. Because without having, a healthy mindset prior to entering to the dating scene, it's just going to create space and opportunity to have related experiences that aren't very positive. Hence, some of the negative conversations that people have on first dates or while they're getting to know someone where there's a disconnect or, you just constantly experiencing that misalignment. You can always it always points back to the mindset. So being clear that, you know, dating is something that you truly desire, you are open to the experience. Not only being clear about what you desire, but being able to communicate that in the relationship and knowing when the other person is doing the same. And if there's any ambiguity, any concern around getting to know someone that you feel that confident enough to, express that and to gain clarity from the other person because it's an opportunity to continue to get to know each other. And you always want to have that that communication in the relationship. And sometimes, again, depending on your mindset, may not be comfortable giving voice to what you're noticing. You may not be as curious in the relationship. These are important considerations for a healthy relationship, or at least being on the right path to experiencing a healthy relationship.
Let me see if I switch microphones. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me just switch microphones. The cool thing about the
can.
okay, the cool thing about this studio is that we never have to stop. I can literally just edit all of this out. That's the cool thing about using this
Yes.
studio. All right.
Yes.
So what I was asking, yeah, what I was asking was in regards to mindset, because you mention it a lot. And I was asking what mindset shift that somebody can make that has the most immediate impact on their dating.
That love, being in a healthy relationship is possible. And when you know that it's possible, it doesn't mean that you know exactly how it's going to unfold. You may not have all the answers. You have a lot of examples to steer you in the right direction. But if you just know that it's possible, it allows you to be open to the possibilities. And so continuing to have that mindset will also help you to be more open to those opportunities or those connections when they show up. Because sometimes when we don't have that, you don't make that mindset shift, you don't know if you don't realize that you're sabotaging opportunities along the way. So if you think it's possible, if you're open to it, then when the right connection comes, then you'll be able to experience it.
Okay. You have a free guide on your website, the places to meet guide. Let's talk about that briefly from, I suppose, the different perspectives of people. So let's say, because I know it'll be different for somebody in their 50s to somebody in their 20s, somebody in their 30s. So if you were advising somebody in their 50s on dating from your guide, where would be some of the places somebody in their 50s would meet people?
So, the way I created my guide, I believe it applies regardless if you're 20 or if
Okay.
you're 50 and beyond. And, I tried to create this guide very intentionally because I wanted really everyone to benefit. Now, of course, you can sort of modify it along the way, but I believe that it's applicable to anyone who is interested in getting out more and having opportunities to make connections in ways that, they had not experienced before. I also included tips for making those connections to help with the conversation, getting to know someone along the way as well. Again, can apply regardless of where you are in life. And because we all have our own personality, we're going to bring something unique to that experience. So, again, that can easily make tweaks along the way using the tips, but can certainly apply regardless.
So it's Thursday afternoon. I'm in New York City. Where does the guide tell me to go?
Well, one recommendation, we talked about the coffee date earlier. You don't have to actually go on a date to go to a cafe to meet someone. I'm really big on solo dates too. So you can if it's in the middle of the afternoon, you can get a beverage from a cafe, have a seat, you know, be curious about what you're observing. I remember when I was single, I would meet a lot of people in a cafe, especially because they would notice that I'm by myself and I would smile and I would speak. And so it was pretty easy to make connections that way. So that's a very simple and it can be an easy way to make connections while you're out without spending a lot of money, a lot of time. It's flexible.
Go back to the generational thing because I'm in coffee shops quite a bit, whether I'm in the UK or in New York City or whatever, and you see people with their headphones in, and they're on their computers or they're on their headphones with their smartphone, which is sending a message, don't talk to me. That's what I asked you before. Generationally, does it make a difference? Because I see some people like that. And then I do see some people, like you mentioned, just having a cup of coffee, relaxing. So is it not generational as far as where to meet people?
I mean, it can be, but you were asking about my guides, and I believe that all the recommendations I made apply across the board. And I think you make a good point about when you see people in a cafe and they have their headphones on and they're looking at their phones. I mean, sometimes people you may observe someone in that position because there are the reality, there are people that are a little uncomfortable sitting in cafes by themselves. So that might be a way to sort of distract them from the thought of being alone, or it's a way to multitask because I think that's the world we live in too, where we're multitasking. I remember when I went to cafes, I would see people who were clearly doing work, but they would look up and they would notice people and engage in conversation sometimes. And so it depends, but yeah, I wouldn't assume that you can't make a connection with someone who appears to be fully immersed in whatever they're doing.
Fair enough. I watched one of your reels, and I think the topic was dating with intention. Briefly, tell me what does that mean? Dating with intention.
So when you date with intention, I know that's kind of a buzz term, but you can replace intention with purpose. When you date with intention, you have clarity. You're very clear about your purpose for dating, and that's why it's important to take time to think about not only if it's something that you want to do at this point in your life, but how you want to show up, how you'd like others to show up for you. How can you communicate that in your relationships? So you're intentional every step of the way. It doesn't mean that you need to have it figured out, and it doesn't matter, if you haven't had positive experiences yet, but thinking about how you want to continue to show up along the way will help guide you. And while taking in the experiences, understanding that when a connection doesn't work out, what it's teaching you, being very intentional about, how you receive the lessons that come from those dating experiences.
Got it. Dr. Henry, is your focus just with women or do you work with women and men?
Good question. I do work with men as well. I talk a lot about supporting women because as a woman who dated and had all these experiences that eventually led to meeting my husband, I get really excited about just encouraging other women as well. Because I just remember how lonely the journey felt at one point. And so, I want women to know that, you know, there is support for you, love is out there for you, there's someone out there for you, and to be encouraged. But, I do work with men as well.
Sorry about that. We got disconnected there for a second. I'm in the north of England, and the internet, when the weather is not good, is spotty. My apologies for that, but don't worry. We don't have to start over because we can just edit and go from there. So I got everything that you said was already recorded, so we're fine. So I'm just going to ask the next question because we're almost ready to wrap up anyway. So we're good. So can you hear me? Can you hear me? My apologies. Okay, let's turn up the volume here. Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, let's get the volume back. Can you hear me? Hello, 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 hello. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm back. My apologies. As I was saying, I'm in the north of England, close to Manchester. It's very rural, and when the weather is bad, our internet is horrific. But the good news is the recording didn't stop. We just lost the connection, but your answer was recorded, so it's no problem. I was going to go into wrapping up anyways. So we'll just record that and then I'll edit everything in. So here we go here. So Dr. Henry, it was really great to have you on the show and everything you shared, but I want to give you the opportunity to connect with the audience directly. So tell us, how can somebody get in touch with you if they want to, have you as their dating coach and relationship advice person? How can we connect with you?
Okay, great. And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. It's certainly been an honor. And as far as how people can get in touch with me, there are a couple of ways. Of course, I'm on social media. I have to say, I probably spend most of my time on TikTok because it was really the first platform where I really put myself out there. People can get in touch with me through TikTok. I have if you go to my page, you can see exactly how you can schedule a session or even send a message to me directly. I'm on Instagram as well, but I don't show up there as much, but that is another place, same way. If you go to my page, you can see exactly how you can schedule or just send a direct message to me. And I have a website as well. Oh, I should probably give you my handles. So the handles are the same for TikTok and Instagram. It's dr underscore Michelle Henry. And that's Michelle with one L, Michele, Henry, Henry. And my website, it's easy to remember. It's just drmichellehenry.com, drmichellehenry.com. It's pretty simple to navigate my website. So same thing, you can send a message directly and to schedule or ask questions, whatever comes up.
Well, thank you so much again. Thanks for sharing and thanks for being with me on Behind the Story. And I wish you all the success in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Behind the story.